We are mucus free. 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 Greetings, brothers and sisters. This is Professor Spira, and welcome to another office hours session. And it's been a couple weeks since I've had the office hour here, and hope you've all been enjoying yourselves and enjoying the final days of summer, depending on where you are located at. If you're lucky enough to be someplace where where there's not gonna be a winter, then I am I'm happy for you, and I hope to be like you one day in the future. And so what's been going on with you? Well, with me, just been busy as usual, working on just a lot of projects. I started meeting with some of the folks that applied to be members of the Mucus-free team, and if I didn't reach out to you yet, just please be patient. You know, I'm kind of working my way through. You know, I'm not trying not to rush things, because I really want to build a great foundation, and I'm just blessed to have so many of you that are really interested in participating and just helping with this cause of trying to get this information out. You know, trying to educate people and at least expose people to the Mucusless Diet Healing System. That's my mission, is exposure, and doing the best we can to have information available. You can lead people to the information, but you can't make them read the book. You can't make them get it or be interested in it. But if the information is available, there's no excuse, at least on that level. Whereas a number of years ago, the information wasn't as widely available. You know, you had to kind of come across it, or in terms of Mucusless Diet Healing System, you pretty much would have to hear about it from somebody. And so the book continued to sell well over the past, throughout the latter part of the 20th century, but it never got huge exposure, because small groups of people would get exposed to it, and it was kind of largely a word of mouth, where someone would hear about it, and it was kind of this underground kind of phenomenon. Now, this always comes down. Now, I still consider us somewhat, this is still an underground movement. We're grassroots. Put it. I think we're getting above ground a little bit. Now we're the grassroots, and this is where I think we should be. Is down here. This isn't something that I was talking about this yesterday, where one of the reasons why Mucusless Diet Healing System has, first of all, why it didn't become super popular before, was there's not a whole lot. It's not a ready-made thing to make money promoting it. Whereas if you notice, things that have kind of blew up are things where people had things to sell other than just the information. So the herbs and the supplements, or some kind of tonic or something. And I'm not selling no one no herbs. I'm not, I offer some information, and there's a lot of free information, a ton of free information, and there's some things that are in the books. And I learned, as me and Brother Aaron, a lot of us learned over the years, is giving away free Mucusless Diet books doesn't necessarily not do a service to the person that you're giving it to if they won't read it. And so I saw that people have more likelihood of actually reading the book and taking it seriously if they have to have some kind of investment in paying a few bucks to check out a book and to check the information out. But over the years, Fred Hirsch tried to sell Inner Clean formula, but he had other things going on, so he was he kind of had different things happening besides just promoting and selling the Mucusless Diet Healing System. And then when Alvin Last came in the picture, who bought Arid Publishing from Fred Hirsch in the 1970s, he actually had a business where he was selling herbs and supplements, and initially he wanted to just have the rights to sell the Inner Clean formula, and then ultimately kind of read the Mucusless Diet book and kind of got it a little deeper into it, and then just after spending some time with Fred Hirsch, they bonded, and he just decided, well, hey, let me just buy. He dedicated himself to keeping the Mucusless Diet alive and in print, and decided to purchase Mucusless Diet, the whole Arid literature, and he kept it going through until about 2011. So. But even still, he had a lot of other things happening. Mucusless Diet wasn't paying the bills for him. He had other things he was doing, and so that's one thing. Now, so that's a huge thing, because then a lot of people don't, they don't want to get on board with that. Another thing is reason that a kind of a community hadn't developed, in my observation, is because. Or why it's been kind of harder to get into it is, people are attracted by other people. If there's a group of people, like just if you're walking down the street and there's kind of a group of people surrounding something, you're probably going to get curious, and you might go over there to just, if anything, be nosy and see what's happening. Maybe there's somebody performing on the street, or somebody's doing a political soapbox speech or something. There's something happening. Somebody might have got hurt, heaven forbid, but something's happening, and there's a group of people, and you're more likely to go over there, unless if there's just two people standing over there, you might not care. There's two people standing over there looking at something, not a big deal. If there's 200 people over there, I bet you might go over there and check it out. With Mucusless Diet, that hadn't happened yet in terms of the community. So although a lot of people had read the book, there hadn't been someone to come along and really establish a community. Now, Hirsch tried to, and he had the newsletter that he put out, and he kept the Mucusless Diet Healing System, Arnold Arid Club alive and that kind of thing. But overall, it didn't turn into some kind of a big thing compared to, say, what had happened with raw foodism, the raw foodist community, or the vegan community, or vegetarians, or some of these larger scale kind of communities that develop. Some of them lasting longer than others. Within those communities, there's smaller factions that come about. But one reason that I see that for instance, the raw foodism kind of really just took off over the past 10 years, and especially over the past 5 years, there was this huge surge of raw foodists and raw foodism, and I noticed that one of the reasons that was able to explode like that was because there was already a kind of a social structure established, and kind of a belief system and a value system that was already in place, and that makes it easy for people that come along. Some of the more popular raw food folks that came along, that kind of makes it a little easier to promote, because there's already a structure there. It's a social structure. With the Mucusless Diet, there was nothing like that. And so we had very humble beginnings in terms of just trying to get a few people interested in reading Mucusless Diet book. And that's always been my goal, has just been to try to inspire people to read the books, study the information, and then out of that to be a studious community of people that like to read and like to study and analyze and think through things and think for themselves. I've always tried to promote that, and that's one reason why, over the years, as people started asking me more and more questions online about the Mucusless diet, that's when I was like, okay, well, there's enough interest to warrant at least putting out some literature, so that I don't have to send the same email all the time, because I'd get the same questions and I'd have to send out the same email. So then I was like, well, let me get some books. Let me just put out some. First it was like the blog post stuff, and then it was like, let me just put out a book. Then that's when Spira Speaks came along, and we're gonna talk about that a little later. And then ultimately the annotated Mucusless Diet Healing System. But it for me, it was always a response to what I was seeing with real people in the community. Everything that I've ever done or try to do is a direct response to something that's happening, where I see a need that can be supplemented with some information. So I try to make some stuff available. So anyway, today there's a couple questions. As you know, there's actually I didn't put the link down below, but actually let me do something really quickly here. I forgot to send out a message to the social media folks to let them know that we're live. And so okay. Let's see here. All right, cool. So anyway, you find folks in the chat. I'd love to hear just some things about how's your transition going. Today we're going to talk a lot about transition. There's a number of questions that I received, and I'm not going to get to all of them. There's one that I really want to focus on because it's just an issue that's near and dear to my heart, and I think I really can't talk about. I can't talk about it enough, which is, transition diet and transition methodology and all that good kind of stuff. I don't think I have the question link there, but after when I get done, I'll put that link up there if you have questions that you'd like me to talk about in the future, and I will try to do that. But today we are going to explore some transition diet things, and what I want to share is I'm going to talk more candidly about some of the transitional menus and approaches that I personally used in the earlier days of my Mucusless diet transition. And one of the reasons I want to do that, one of the reasons that I've tended to not do that over the years is because, one of the huge challenges with trying to share the Mucusless diet with people is to get people to understand that it's about the system. So you're not eating the same way for extended long periods of time. There's a systematic application. This is totally different from most of what's taught, say, in various raw foodist approaches, where people are focused on these percentage points of, well, I'm 90% raw and 10% cooked and this and that. But there's no systematic. What's your system? How are you applying? Are you applying some kind of systematic mechanical approach to eating that's going to help you transform your physiology and transform your eating habits, not immediately, but over an extended period of time? That's not usually a part of those those approaches. Hence why those are not systems. Same thing in the vegan community. Same thing in the carnivore paleo community. We're an all-inclusive thing here, where it's all, as far as I'm concerned, it's all the same non-systematic approach, which is, to me, one of the huge benefits of the Mucusless Diet Healing, operative word, system. And so, and I'm kind of say all this because as I share some of my transitional things, which I did talk about to some extent in Spira Speaks. So I used to tell people, if you want to hear more about some of the things that I used early on in my transition, check out Spira Speaks. Now, this was a pedagogical decision on my part to do that, not because I was trying to hide something, or I didn't want to talk about what I ate or that kind of thing. It was because I knew that talking about certain things, especially like 5 years ago, because I was communicating mostly with raw foodists, that I describe it as, those old those cartoons with the firefighters, and people are jumping out of the building, and the firefighters have the big thing to catch the people. And I felt like that was what I was doing with the raw foodist people and folks that were kind of getting into fruitarianism with no transition, no methodology, just I ate nothing but raw fruit for the past 4 months, or I'm being 100% raw. I've been 100% raw for the past 4 years. And then they start going through some terrible eliminations and some scary stuff. And I tried to be there to say it's okay to eat cooked foods. Now, people wanted to crucify me for saying that, because they had this assumption that Erit was raw fruitarianism. For some reason, just like people who hadn't even read the Mucusless Diet book, they just kind of would hear about the Mucusless Diet and be like, oh, Erit, fruit, right? Yeah, that sounds cool. I want to do that. Read the book. There's a difference between the so-called ideal diet of humans, which is a philosophy, or something that is an ideal, and what you should do today. The 3 sections on transition diet. There's not 3 sections on ideal diet that you need to get to as fast as possible. There's no chapter like that. There's no lesson like that. But there's 3 lessons in the modern Mucusless Diet Healing System books that deal with transition diet, transitional methodology. So, with all that said, let's get to these questions here, or questions. So this is kind of a 2-part question. In fact, I'm gonna talk about the second part of it actually more than the first part. But so the question is from Tanya. I am literally shook by trying the mucus-free lifestyle. I was so hungry. I craved bad foods. I have not had the willpower to stick with it. I love coffee and honey. I caved and started eating bad again. How do you build a support system when nobody around you is interested in eating mucus-free? So there's a few things to unpack there, but before I get into that, then there was a note that was added that kind of gets into some other things, and the note says, I've read that because of acid rain and the environmental pollutants, whether we eat mucus-free, organic, or non-organic, it is a challenge to find healthy food in the U.S. Some organic growers also produce food that is not organic or mucus-free. That is troubling. Many growers, whether organic or not, still use pesticides and preservatives on food. We eat the food, feel the effect, and have long-term illness later. I'm looking for ways to grow mucus-free foods indoors. Please point me to any sources that you have to get started with this. Thanks in advance. So now I don't have too many sources at my disposal at the moment. I have to look into that because I personally haven't looked too much into that part of it. And there's some people in the community that are actually, I mean, I know at least 3 people right now that are studying advanced or organic farming and permaculture and different things. And so we're going to have some folks, and we already have some folks in the community that own their own orchards and farms and all that kind of stuff, and do everything that they can do very naturally. So you might want to you actually post that, ask who has their own gardens and grows their own food or grows their own food indoors. That's actually a great question for the community in the on the Facebook forum, in the Mucusless Diet Healing System Facebook forum. I've personally not gotten into that yet. I've not gotten into growing a whole lot of my own stuff as of yet. But the other point that I wanted to make, though, in terms of what I don't, and this isn't necessarily strictly for you, this is just bringing up something that I wanted to address, or that I actually talked about at the Arete Festival, which we'll look at in a second, which is that we shouldn't be, in my opinion, not too obsessed with worrying about every little thing in terms of the diet. Because like I've said a number of times, to me, the purpose of the Mucusless diet and any of these healing lifestyles, at least in my opinion, or at least I'll just talk about Mucusless diet, so mucus-free lifestyle, is it's not to be obsessed all the time about food and what and oh, is this clean enough, and is this where we get into this kind of hypochondriac kind of thing where you're just obsessed about everything. To me, that's not the point. The point is methodology. Get the transitional methods together, get the principles, really understand, have a working knowledge of the principles and of the transition methodologies, and as you and allow yourself to deal with the transition gently, and as you move forward, you will be able to enjoy yourself, enjoy life. This isn't supposed to take all your time. So if you're too focused on all of the every little pesticide and everything, the first couple years of me practicing Mucusless diet, I didn't use organic stuff. I didn't start really using organic things for a while into my transition. Brother Air, same thing. It's what I say is, for one, the body, I believe the body has the ability to is gonna filter. It's gonna filter the stuff out anyway. Now, I'm not saying that it's great to use the conventional stuff. My point is that get whatever you can afford and whatever you can find, but don't obsess about it. If all you can get is a conventional apple, there's nothing organic available, that conventional apple is better than a can of Spam or a chicken liver breast or something. So we got to put this thing into perspective. And in saying that, let's watch this video clip, this is from the Arete Festival. If you want access to the entire library, 5.5 hours of footage from the Arnold Arete Festival, hit the link below and you can get information on how you can get access to that. But check this out. Being happy with the air that we're breathing. So yeah, you can look at it as, oh, this world is so nasty, and that's one excuse some people use to try to not get into the diet. They say, well, the world is so filthy and the water is messed up and this and that. It's like, yeah, but we're breathing right now and we're not falling over dead. And so now that we have this consciousness, what are we going to do to start transitioning back? There's a lot of people that have this sense of entitlement. As soon as and I've noticed this in the raw food community, as soon as they
get this consciousness, and I'm gonna be a fruitarian, and I'm gonna eat raw, and I'm gonna have all organic stuff, then they get this kind of snobby attitude. It's like, well, I need to have life with this and that. It's like, yeah, well, hold on a second. Last week you were eating Burger King. This week you're mad because you can't get your organic mangoes. We gotta bring this back. I mean, we're working through some stuff. We let it get this bad, and instead of being depressed about it and just complaining about it with negative energy, I mean, we can, I can complain about it. I complain about it, but I'm not using that as a way of just being depressed about it. I'm saying that if my ancestors been taken from their country or their whole life and forced into labor and beat to death and raped to death and all the atrocities that happened, if my ancestors could do that, I'm gonna survive eating a conventional apple if I can't get an organic one today. So there's just, so I'm saying, find the best fruits and vegetables that you can afford, that you can get, but we also have to be realistic, and we have to take responsibility for, now that we have this consciousness, we need to do whatever we can do to go in the right direction.
So again, if you want to get the full 5.5 hours, it was Brother Air Talk and Takora, Danielle Miranda, Renee Henry. You want to get all that along with we had a little juice party, fresh juice party, live music. If you want that, check down below. We got a little sale going as well for it. And so, what in the world? So yeah, let's get on to, okay. So I'm so for Tanya, I'm not saying that that's necessarily you, that you're entitled. That's just in terms of, that's not a dig on you or anything. When I'm talking about this entitlement, I mean that goes for, kind of anybody that gets to a point where they're unable to be happy because they're too obsessed with everything that is happening that's outside of your control. Whether it be, you don't have access to the organic fruits and vegetables that you want. You don't, whatever it is, the chemtrails and the conspiracies of the government and all this stuff. I mean, there's a lot of things that we can get lost in, but it can easily, first of all, just make you depressed and unhappy. If it's one thing to get the knowledge and be very aware of of what you're in, this situation that we're in. For me, the Mucusless Diet Healing System was an answer to the questions that I'd had about why is this a warring planet? Why is the world so screwed up? And humans getting away from nature, eating a diet that is totally unnatural to their physiologies, that was an answer that was the answer I was looking for. And I was looking everywhere, from all the different religions and spiritualities and the philosophies and the philosophers. I looked everywhere and didn't find a good answer that I could really live with until I got to the Mucusless Diet Healing System. So let's get back to this here, where you say I'm literally shook by trying mucus-free lifestyle. I was so hungry, craved bad food. I have not had the willpower to stick with it. I love coffee and honey. I caved and started eating bad again. How do you build a support system when nobody around you is interested in eating mucus-free? So, all right, so before we get to the with the support system, that's like a separate piece, because dealing with the diet part, from what you're saying, it sounds like I don't know what you did, but based on what you're saying here, it sounded like you didn't really dig into the transition diet. Like you maybe were trying to be mucus free, and maybe you looked at a list of foods that are considered to be mucus free and mucus forming, and you're just trying to eat mucus free foods. And I always warn about to not do that with the Mucusless Diet Healing System. The Mucusless Diet Healing System is not a foodless diet. There are foodless diets out there, people that have lists of good and bad foods and foods that are forbidden and foods that are all that kind of stuff. Mucusless diet is not like that. There's not like a forbidden foods list and a always okay to eat list. It's not like that. Some of the healthiest, best foods on the list might not be recommended to you today, depending on what you're going through physiologically. Eric did not recommend raw fruits for people right away. I mean, in fact, if you follow his weekly his weekly menu plans for beginning the diet, you wouldn't even have raw fruit for an entire month. So I know very few people that kind of practice the diet like that from the beginning, where they just really stuck to what Eric had in the book, and to the point where they didn't even have raw fruit. Now I don't necessarily promote that particular approach, but you deal with those menus, deal with what's with those methodologies. Something I'm gonna try to do over the next months is I'm gonna really try to talk in more detail about different transitional approaches and menus and things like that. But for now, before I talk about my own personal stuff, let me get down into. So this is an annotated Mucusless diet, and this is the transition diet lessons, and you want to read all three of these, and I really encourage you, go through these lessons and take it all in. See, I would love to have more questions that get into the details of the transition methodologies, like methodological questions, like that are detailed, that are like, okay, so Eric said this, but maybe I can try it like this. What if I switch it around a bit, or what if I change? Because that kind of flexibility is available within the Mucusless Diet Healing System, because it's not rigid. This is not a rigid system, although people try to impose rigidity onto it. Please do not. This is not a rigid system. There's principles that you get that are right here in these lessons. Certain things that are guidelines, and they're not laws. There's no like you have to do this, you have to eat this. It's all guidelines. But once you understand the transitional methodology, even if you're eating something like meat, or you're eating some starchy stuff, or you go to a wedding and you eat some cheese, or you whatever, you didn't fail. You're not out the club just because you ate something that is not strictly part of what Eric recommended. The transition in the adapting this information into a lifestyle is about learning how to find your comfort level, find the plateau where you're comfortable. First of all, and there was a good quote that Brother Air recently said that's coming from the Air Day, where he said everything he did was he wanted a level of comfort. Where the transition, even though you go through different eliminations and not every day you feel great, there should be a level of comfort that's there, and that level, it can be based on the kinds of transitional options you decide to use. But these are, you look at the menus for the first 2 weeks, and then lunch combination salad consists of raw grated carrots, coleslaw, or both. Spoonful of some stewed or canned vegetables such as green peas, string beans, or spinach. Add this, one of the other items, cucumbers, tomatoes, green onions, lettuce, etc. So it's kind of a general salad. You can make an oil dressing according to your taste if desired, using lemon juice instead of vinegar for flavoring purposes. The rest of the meal should consist of baked or stewed vegetables such as cauliflower, beets, parsnips, turnips, squash, etc. If you still feel as though you are hungry, you may eat a small-sized baked sweet potato or one slice of toasted bran or whole wheat bread. Fats of any kind, including ordinary butter, are unnatural and therefore should not be eaten. However, should you crave fats, it is best to use peanut butter or some other nut butter on your bread. So I understand this wording can sometimes, because again, people want this to be rigid. They want strict rules and laws. They want authoritarianism. I hate that. I want freedom. I want a rational structure. So I'm not an anarchist in that sense of I don't want absolutely no structure. I want some structure, but I want the freedom to experiment. You know, I want those rules. I'm a jazz musician. I'm an improvisational artist, so I like to improvise. But when you learn how to improvise, you start from somewhere. You're not just making something up out of thin air. There's a tradition that's behind your improvisation. No, whatever it is, if it's music, some type of music, if you improvise, if you're an improvising musician of classical Indian music, that's a tradition. But you don't necessarily know exactly what notes you're going to play. It's an improvisation of that. Or it's just jazz or any other musical tradition where there's an improvisational aspect to it. There's this freedom. So I look at Eretz, the way he sets things up, you can use that as the overall structure. So this acts as a structure of how you're combining. So it's have to use this, and even in the way that Eretz presents this, there is this inherent sharing it in a way that gives you options. So it's already not strict, and I understand that that's hard for some people, but that's part of the art of this particular approach of trying to get into Eretz, breaking out of the box thinking, breaking out of that. And I understand there's sometimes when people really have trouble with this diet is because they're unable to improvise. It's hard for them to improvise. It's hard for them to not be told exactly what to do. But this is going to challenge you. This is going to challenge you to study the principles, study the structure there, because there is a structure. Study that structure, and then improvise. Then live your life. Once you know the rules and you know the structure, then you can improvise. And I encourage that. But it's one thing to improvise and say, okay, well, you ask somebody, what'd you eat today? It's like, well, I ate some cake this morning. I fell off the wagon, so I ate some cookies and cake. And then, later in the day, I tried to get better and I had some fruit. And then this is like, no, that would not be how someone that's really applying the structure would fall off the wagon. Someone that, and it's not even really falling off the wagon. It's just, having a little mucus relapse or losing a little bit of control. What would make more sense is, okay, you're craving some soup. You could eat those same things, but it would be organized different. So you would not eat some cake first thing in the morning. You would have the discipline to doing that. If you're craving cake in the morning, you would have the discipline to do an enema first before you do anything. But then maybe you have salad or baked fruit or a salad something in the afternoon, in the evening. Maybe you're still craving that stuff. Then have the vegetable meal, a big salad, then maybe you eat that cake or that cookies or whatever it is. But there's a method to that. It's just not out of nowhere. There's a reason why you don't eat. There's a reason why you always eat mucus with vegetables. That kind of mucus stuff. So now, I've gone over this a lot, and I want you to go back over, but that's the part one. But you got to keep going. There's a part two and a part three as well, and as you get deeper into it, it gives you more options. It gives you, and it further solidifies what the structure can look like. And so we get into parts that are, square meal substitute, before a crisis, shortly after, to satisfy craving for wrong foods, especially rich in fat. You may try this once in a while. While it's too rich, it is much less harmful than a square meal, and will be found to be enjoyable. Take some grated coconut mixed or eaten together with applesauce, stewed prunes, or sweetened apricots. Very ripe bananas, or if unripe, then baked, will be found to satisfy when unusually hungry. Other kinds of grated nuts or nut butter may be served once in a while for this purpose, but are too rich in protein and will produce, if continually used, mucus and uric acid. If continually used. So yes, it is okay to use nut butters. That's twice he makes that recommendation. So don't get caught up in the part that says that you shouldn't eat them, if right after he said, and I admit that can be confusing, but I'm clarifying it right now, saying it's okay to deal with the nut butters. It's okay to deal with, in this case where he had the grated coconut kind of thing. Let's see. We'll go through all of these. So I wanted to look at this Siberian goulash. Now in the Mucusless Diet Healing System e-course, I actually go through a lot of these recipes, and I kind of get into some of the details of these recipes. But this is now the reason that I'm highlighting a couple of these recipes is because they made the kind of the foundation of my things that I experimented with when I developed my own transitional menus. So I would, in some cases, really study these recipes, but make my own based on them, based on the logic or of the recipes or so forth. So this Siberian vegetable goulash, stew in a very little water, and I talk about what stewing means in the notes and things, but that's just, it's kind of just heating up just a little bit of water, and you kind of almost steam it in the pot there. But stew with very little water, olive oil, or in a vegetable fat, coarsely sliced white or red cabbage, and some sliced onions with some sliced sweet peppers. When in season, and finish stewing with some sliced tomatoes, a little salt and pepper if desired. Red or white cabbage with onions baked or broiled in a little fat in tomato sauce as a gravy is an appetizing dish. The same can be done with cauliflower, carrots, Brussels sprouts, beets, and leaves. Somebody write amen out there, because I use that. I mean, that helped me get off of. That was one of the things that helped me get off of meat, that helped me get off of a number of things. I ate that like crazy. I used to go and get I got a case for $20, it was like for $15, I got something like 30 heads of cabbage. I used to eat cabbage, and I would bake cabbage, I would stew cabbage, and I was cabbage and broccoli. I would make onion saute, throw in, throw some of the, make the onion saute, add a little bit of water, throw in some of those vegetables, chop up the cabbage. I did broccoli more than cauliflower, although I did do a little cauliflower, maybe some carrots. I got into Brussels sprouts, beets. I mean, I lived there. How many of you can say that are having problems can say that you spent 2 or 3 years eating like that, like quite a bit, where you were having huge, I was never ever hungry, ever. I was, if anything, I was too full, because I ate as much of that as I felt like. I wasn't, because if I was eating mucus-free, I wasn't trying to restrict the amount. Now some people would say something negative about that, but in my approach and where I was coming from, I was like, well, That was my compromise. And Eric said, and elsewhere in the Mucusless Diet book, he talks about that it's okay to eat larger quantities, and then sometimes you need to eat larger quantity of food so you can have a natural bowel movement. And some folks are coming from the raw world and they're so used to eating small amounts of stuff that they're not eating enough. So please quote me now. I'm telling you, you're not eating enough. And I'm getting passionate about this because I'm observing people that are falling off the wagon. And I've been observing this for 15 years. But people are falling off the wagon because they are so resistant to getting into the transition diet. They refuse. They think they're better than this. They think they're better than the transition diet. They think they can be mucus-free tomorrow. They think they can eat nothing but fruit because they ate nothing but fruit for a couple weeks. That this I'm gonna live like this the rest of my life. You're probably not. I'm warning you. And so I'm gonna be stronger on this message now. And for those of you that are just transitioning into starting from the basic, then I'm not even really talking to you. You're doing what you need to do. This message is more for the raw foodists and the fruitarians that are, I know there's a lot of folks that come from the Morris camp that end up, that kind of, because Morris doesn't talk about transition diet, at least he didn't used to, or Dr. Sabi, never saw him really talk about the transition diet. He recommended and told people to check out Arnold Ehret's work. But most folks, or you get into some of the raw food figures, or anybody, but I've never came across somebody say eat cooked cabbage for several years. I mean, I killed that. Like, that was one of my main after the 100% wheat spaghetti period, which I guess I'll talk about. But those of you that watch my videos, you've heard me talk about the 100% wheat spaghetti. This was it, like right here. Like this was my motto in terms of, and so that's not all I ate, but so with that, what my day might look like would be, for lunchtime, I might do what I call Eric's 2-course meal. So I would have some kind of fruit. So maybe I have 3 apples, or maybe I have 2 bananas. Then I'd wait 15 minutes, and I would have a big raw salad, and I might have some beans in there, some uncooked beans, or what else? Like kidney beans or black beans. I might throw something like that in there. I might throw some sunflower seeds on there, or something like that. I might even cook some beans and have a side of beans on the side of that. But that would be a meal. That's a totally legitimate meal that even people that don't practice a mucusless diet would say, okay, well, it's a filling meal. That's it's okay, whatever. So I would have something like that. Then in between the lunchtime and dinner time, I would have probably have some raisins and nuts. I got this big thing, a mix of nuts, and I'd get a bunch of raisins, combine it. There was some coconut in there, and I would be dried coconut, and I would crush that at some point during the day. Another thing I would eat sometimes during the day, I would have sticks of carrots and celery, and I'd be at school chomping on that, and people around me are eating. They got all their chips and candy bars and stuff, and looking at me like I'm crazy, and I look back at them like they're crazy, because this is just a carrot. What's wrong? You're eating something that's not even real, coming out the bag. So that would be the first part of the day. Then in the evening, now I'm gonna make me a big salad, and I'm gonna get into this stewed cabbage and cauliflower and carrots, or Brussels sprout, whatever, some type of variation of that. And the tomato sauce. I made these big things of gourmet tomato sauce, and I was just not hungry. I just did not have that problem. I didn't have a problem of losing weight too fast. I just didn't have any of them kind of problems. I wasn't like, weak and couldn't get out of bed or nothing. I didn't have those kind of problems because I followed this transition. I followed this transition and I dealt with all of this. All the cooked fruits. So the lunch meal might be baked banana and applesauce. Early on, it might be the applesauce and cottage cheese, which is something else we'll talk about here. So Eric says, you learned that I use partly cooked food during the transition diet, and in the beginning, the vegetables prevail, meaning you generally would be eating more cooked and raw vegetables earlier on in your transition, along with cooked fruit. Because again, if you really follow this strictly, you don't even eat raw fruit in the first month of your transition. If you're going to go that, if you're really going to go by the book. This has for its purpose the slowing down of the elimination, for it is well known that people can stand a stewed or baked fruit, whereas they cannot stand the same kind when fresh. Vital food is not the entire object to be, and I will make the point that when he says vital food, you can translate that into nutritious food. He uses the concept of vital substances in kind of as a parallel to what we call nutrition today, or nutritious. So vital food or nutritious food is not the entire object to be gained at first, but rather their property to dissolve and to eliminate. This vital healing efficiency is most perfect in all kinds of fresh fruits and will be found to be too aggressive for the majority of patients. This is undoubtedly the cause of the wrong ideas and reason for the fruit fast being in ill repute. And it is the same reason why I use stewed and baked fruits in the beginning to slow down the elimination. So for folks that said, I practiced a diet and I couldn't do it. Did you go an entire month where you had no raw fruits and all you had was mostly cooked and raw vegetables and cooked fruit? Did you do that? Or did you do 2 months long eating nothing but raw fruit with a bunch of herbs coming from a Dr. Morris protocol or some other protocol, or drinking a lot of vegetable juice or something, conversion therapy or whatever? Did you do this? Did you practice the Mucus Healing System, or did you do something else, but you're going to blame the Mucusless Diet Healing System for the problems? If you do this, so, and like I said, I'm gonna start just being more aggressive about this. This is gonna y'all gonna it's gonna cause me to turn into the old school Professor Spira. Before, a lot of you guys did back in the day. I was I'm more mellow now than I used to be. I was kind of hardcore about things and very unapologetic. Because I felt that was the way people needed to hear it back then, in terms of the proper communication for the audience. Now, I think we're in a period where people are starting to get kind of strong again in terms of what they can handle. Because as I kind of changed up the communication model, because it wasn't there was a pretty soft period that we just went through. And it was hard for people to engage with something that was a little bit intense. But now I don't know. I'm just seeing it's changing. Plus, this message needs to get out there, because I'm just seeing it so much now, where people that claim that the foundation in this case, in my opinion, is Mucusless Diet Healing System. And until I feel like people really have a handle on this type of information, this basic transitional methodology, I don't want to get too far off into things that don't relate to this. Because what happens is I start talking about that, then people want to do it. And people want to say, well, Professor Spira did a long fast, so how did he do it? Let me try to do that. I'm saying I don't advocate that. I don't advocate long-term fasting. When you start getting into that, first you should be advanced, and second, you take all the responsibility in terms of once you break away from the basic methodology, you're a pioneer. You know, you're forging ahead, and so I'm not trying to hold you back or, you know, put you in the corner. And I'm just saying that if you're going to explore beyond the principles that laid out by Eric, please don't slander Eric and say that the mucusless diet didn't work and is all messed up because you went outside of the purview and did your own thing. You know, I've done my own thing at times. Brother Ayer's done his own thing. A lot of people have done their own things and sometimes been successful, sometimes not. But you know, the point is that before I did my own thing, I had a very strong foundation in understanding the principles of the healing system. So the things that I did when I experimented were based on this logic, the logic that I learned from deeply studying this content, deeply studying and getting into and understanding logical principles. And I wanted to, let's see, oh, it's sauteed sweet. So then when you start getting into the vegetarian recipes now, of course, some of these recipes were added by Fred Hirsch, but they are, as far as I'm concerned, they're a part of the canon. They're in the books. You know, so even though you go back far enough, they're not. If you go back to the second, I have a copy of 1924 second edition Mucusless Diet Healing System. These added recipes are actually aren't all in there, but and they've changed over the years. But that notwithstanding, there's information in them that can be very helpful. So to go through them, like I said in the e-course, I actually go through these in more detail, and I kind of highlight some of these important recipes. But let's see. Especially the cooked vegetable recipes, to me, is very, very important to study for your early part of your transition. Let's see. And someone was asking about eggplant. Here's an eggplant hash. Cut eggplant in half lengthwise. Place in oven until baked to a mushy pulp. Remove a peel, mash. Add fried onions. Season to taste. Tomato sauce. You know, eggplant was never something that I did like all the time, but I would have a couple eggplants a month usually. You know, I would, in the early days of the transition, I would make it pretty much like that. You know, I would do the eggplant thing. Where was the one that I wanted? So there's the Italian meatballs. Cook 2 cups whole wheat spaghetti in boiling water until tender. Meanwhile, mix 2 cups of nut meatloaf, half cup onions, half cup chopped celery, 1/8 cup hot peppers or to flavor, and Italian tomato sauce. Form into balls and fry in a pan at medium temperature. Serve with spaghetti and more Italian tomato sauce. Now, if you make that, you think you're going to be hungry? When you have a big salad, 2 cups of whole wheat spaghetti, and nut meatloaf, and you eat all that, and you're gonna be hungry. Come on now. But you didn't try that yet. A lot of you didn't. You act like that's not even a part of this. If this is not even a part of Mucusless Diet System, it's about being raw, or it's about trying to be mucus free as fast as possible, when it's not. It's not. It's just, I don't know how else to express how much it's not. It's not. I can't. As all I can do is say this is what's in the book, and then this is how those things have been interpreted and used. Now, in later versions of the diet, the protos was eliminated. But so this okay, what we're looking at now, this is a photocopy of the I think this is the 6th edition from 1924, and there is a mock ham loaf. That's the that was in there. That many people that read the English language version, whether you read my version or you read the Arab literature one, you've never seen that, because sometime in the 50s, I believe, Fred Hirsch removed this, and he removed other things, and there's other changes that have happened to the book over the years. So when people say they want to read the original Mucusless Diet, understand that if you're reading the 1994 edition, that's not really the original Mucusless Diet Healing System, just so you know. If you want to see the original, the best you can do at this point is try to get your hands on an old copy, one of the 1924 copies, which is going to be hard for you, because I got a lot of them copies, and I try to grab them when I find them as a collector. But this mock ham loaf, let me scoot in a little bit. Now this is just interesting. That's why I'm looking at this. So 1 pound of nutoline, which that doesn't exist anymore. Nutoline, ½ pound of protose. Now I mention and define what protose is in the annotated book, and say that in older versions this protose was talked about, and I'll find it in a second. 4 teaspoons of Savita or Vegex, ½ teaspoon salt, 3 tablespoons margarine, 1 tablespoon onion juice, 4 ounces of Vegex gelatin, 1 cup boiling water. Mix 1 pound of the nutoline with 2 tablespoons of margarine, set aside to use later to prepare the gelatin. Soak for 30 minutes in warm water, remove from the water, and put to cook in boiling water for 8 minutes, boiling. Strain. Cook in boiling water, mince the protose, and mix with all of the other ingredients. Set on ice. When cold, cover the nutoline with butter. Cut in slices, garnish with and spray parsley. Now I'm not recommending this, and Fred Hirsch removed it. So if you see, I don't know. Okay, I don't got a copy handy. But if you look in one of the original, one of the versions, the later versions of the Arab publishing, this was removed, because things like because every once in a while in these old versions there are products that are listed that went extinct. There's no nutoline anymore, I don't think. Protose, and protose is basically it's the 1920s version of soy, basically of soy burger, or fake meat, fox meat, kind of substance. And in fact, I think Protose was coined by John Harvey Kellogg, the inventor, and used as a brand name by the Battle Creek Foods. Let's see, protein and oats. Let's see, it was okay. Here it is. Historical meat substitute made chiefly of wheat, gluten, and peanuts. Popular in the early 20th century. So. And I'm pointing this out because in my transition, based on the logic of these kind of items that are listed as something permissible to use during transition or for transitional purposes, I did use soy burgers or at different points in my transition, or the kind of the fox meat soy stuff. Nowadays, if I was starting now, I might avoid the soy, but use maybe some of the pea protein stuff. Now, I'm not saying that you have to use those things, or advocating and saying, okay, that's what you need. And that's what's made this so hard to teach the transition diet, because it's ever changing. What I ate the way I ate in year 1 and 2 is totally different from how I ate in year 2 and 3, which was totally different from how I ate in 5 and 6, so on and so forth. The way I eat changes kind of fundamentally almost every 2 years. It refines itself and shifts, and there's certain things that I stop eating, other things that I might start eating. So it's hard to give a basic, like, one line answer to, what did you eat today? I could tell you what I ate today, but it's really not going to help you better understand the Mucusless Diet Healing System if you don't know what I ate yesterday, last year, 5 years ago, 15 years ago. If you don't understand the totality of the transition, what I ate today is absolutely meaningless. It means nothing to anybody except me, because I ate it. It's not going to help you understand the transition better, because I didn't get to eating what I ate today by, what I ate today is not how I ate in the beginning of the transition. And so just methodologically and pedagogically, it's a challenge to share some of those things. But the one thing I wanted to do was, which I'll do kind of quickly, is talk a little bit about how bad my diet was, to put into perspective the kind of transitional items that I chose early in my transition. So, sometimes I talk about the root beer stand. So this was my spot. I used to go, this was a root beer stand in Sharonville, Ohio, which is a suburb of Cincinnati. And the place hasn't changed since 1980s or something. It looks the exact same. This is how it looked when I used to go there. And what I used to get, I would go there sometimes twice a week. They were open from spring until fall. So I would go there twice a week. I would get two chili cheese footlongs. So this is a picture of those. 2 chili cheese footlongs, 1 cheeseburger, 2 root beers, and a root beer float, which they don't have, and a bag of popcorn. Now I ate that like I could throw that down like it wasn't nothing. There was a couple times I went to there with some football buddies, and these are guys that can eat, but they couldn't eat as much as me. They couldn't out eat me, and so I used to just crush all this kind of stuff, this food. So I just share that to say this is what I'm coming from. This wasn't once a month or every, this was when they were open. I was there usually twice a week, at least twice a week, and I got the same thing every time I went in. I didn't ever change it up. I didn't say, well, let me just have 1 footlong today. Nuh-uh. 2 footlongs with chili and cheese, a cheeseburger, 2 root beers, bag of popcorn, and a root beer float every time. So what kind of transition is somebody that eats like that going to do? If somebody that eats like that reads the Mucusless Diet Healing System, what's that person gonna do? Because I know a lot of folks are coming from where if you're trying to be raw foodist or all that, and you might have trouble understanding what the nature of the transition of what this looks like to go from that eating this all the time, or another thing. There's a pizza spot that was my spot. And so the Rose's Pizza. Now I could eat an entire large pizza with double pepperoni and bacon as a meal, one sitting, by myself. No, I don't need no help. I also like their manicotti. That was my stuff. They had this. If you went to the amusement park. They sold the Rose's Pizza at the amusement park, and I would get it there. What's that about? But this was and I ate pizza at least. I ate pizza twice a week usually. So I would pizza would be because I ate out almost every day, depending on what stage of my life we're talking about. As I got older, I pretty much ate out most of the time, because I never learned how to cook, and so I would eat out, and so a lot of pizza, a lot of I basically just rotate through the different places and all the different fast food joints and restaurants that I like to go to, and so this was what I was eating. So when I got into Mucusless Diet, or when I first read the Mucusless Diet, when I started to in the early part of it, I was getting into, let me find. So this is something that, all right, so there's a couple different places where Eric talks about the cottage cheese. So that's been something that I haven't talked a whole lot about. It's in the books and it's in Spira Speaks and stuff, but it's not something that I've promoted or talked about and saying, But again, I'm seeing it's time to really talk about all of the options that are available. And so there's the cottage cheese recipe that Era talks about. Cottage cheese mixed with applesauce, and then add some kind of dried fruit. So I used to do cottage cheese, applesauce, and dates, and that was basically just the only difference was instead of raisins, I just used dates. And in this and you can see in here in this sample menu, you got the cottage cheese and applesauce mixture. Add raisins if desired. Place on a bed of lettuce and serve. A 10-minute intermission between the fruit and the salad courses may afford the family an opportunity of talking over the pleasant happenings of the day, and also bear in mind that laughter aids digestion. Then salad, natural vegetable combination salad, baked cauliflower, so on and so forth. Then 2 pieces of whole wheat bread at the end. So again, I'm just really going over this to show you what's possible. I'm not saying that you have to do this. I'm not saying you necessarily have to scoop back to this. But if you're having problems and you fall in the category of somebody that's trying to be 100% mucus free without 10 or 15 years of transition, or you're trying to be 100% raw, or you're trying to eat nothing but fruit, again, without, let's say, 30 years of transition, if you fall into that category where you're pushing yourself to try to do that, you're not practicing the Mucusless Diet Healing System. You're doing that's something else. That's not this. This is a system that includes all of these various items that and shows you how to apply them systematically over time. And that's a key. And so so some other things that I just off the top of my head, other things that I ate. And the reason I always bring up, if somebody say, well, what do you mean when you say the methodology or the transitional methodology or the principles? So what I mean is, in the morning, doing the no breakfast plan or eating nothing but fruit in the morning. That was something that I was able to adopt pretty much from the beginning. Now, Eric does mention that if you're addicted to coffee, then drink it in the morning if you're addicted to it, and we'll work on that. And it's a deep addiction, and we're going to work on it. But you don't have to deprive yourself of it. There's other options. Eric mentions there's a what was that called? There's a product it's coffee that's made. It's a caffeine-free coffee made out of wheat that was used back during the war, World War II, and I think it's still sold actually because I looked into it. But nowhere does it say, okay, coffee's forbidden. It says, it's not good, but if you're accustomed to using something like coffee, then use it. If you are, but beginning the process of applying the principle is you make that decision instead of having bacon and eggs in the morning, which was, I was a bacon and egg and pancake person in the early, 8 a.m. in the morning, eating that kind of stuff. So it was a big deal. Or even cereal and milk. Instead of eating that at 8 a.m. or 9 a.m., instead of doing that, I would have fruit, or I would have juice, or I would take an enema. And an enema would keep me cool until lunchtime. So that was it's on from one vantage point, it's kind of a minor shift, but it's huge. If you are used to eating breakfast every day and you're eating like heavy breakfast kind of stuff, that's huge to switch to eating just fruit in the morning, or taking your enema in the morning, or maybe just having some coffee in the morning and some fruit or something. I mean, that's huge. It's a huge transition. And so, but that's what I mean by applying the principle. That's a principle to either have fruit or nothing in the morning. To judiciously use enemas at the right time, whether it be in the morning or the evening, but to know that that's a tool to incorporate in there, which like I said, sometimes I would do my enema in the morning. Then at lunchtime, I would have some variation of fruit course, wait 10 or 15 minutes, and then have a vegetable course, a salad and stuff. Then maybe if I was still craving something, where I might deviate from exactly what was in the book was, I would get, there was a where I would get, where I went through this organic cereal phase, and they had just started selling like some of these brands like this or whatever. I don't really recommend any particular thing, but they had just started selling this stuff back when I'd started practicing. And so I would get it was soy milk back then, because they didn't have nothing else. All the new fangled kind of other nut milks that are better than soy, they hadn't started selling that yet. So I got soy milk and cereal, and usually Raisin Bran. I would find a Raisin Bran, or I would get some kind of bran thing and put a bunch of organic raisins in it, and that helped me. That actually helped me get off of me. I mean, I would have that sometimes in the evening, but I would methodologically place it after the vegetable meal. So I'm having all of this mucus-free stuff first. That's right out of the book, and then maybe instead of having because the principle is basically to have your mucus-free first and your raw stuff. Then you kind of get into your cooked mucus-free stuff, and if you're going to have some mucus, then you get to that. It's kind of a layered approach. You don't eat the mucus first. That's a principle. You don't eat the mucus first. You eat the mucus last, or you eat the mucus toward the end of the meal with the vegetable stuff, or with the raw salad. That's the methodologies that I'm talking about. That's what I mean when I'm talking about applying the methodologies. It's like you can eat. There's ways to eat some of these things that are transitional. Whereas if I was to eat the cereal first and then have a salad, no, that's not it. That would not be following any kind of systematic logic. That would just be kind of like, okay, I crave this, let me eat this. Well, I better have a salad. If you're gonna, it's instead of forcing yourself to not eat that, apply the methodology. The basic logic that Eric mentioned a number of times is you eat the raw. With the way I distill it down is raw, mucus-free. Well, first you got fruit. So whether it's raw or cooked fruit, you have your fruit part. Then you wait 10, 15 minutes. Then your vegetable part. Start off with the raw salad. Always have the salad involved. To me, that's a hardcore principle. I'm saying if you're going to eat any vegetables, always have some type of salad involved. Don't just have some cooked vegetables by itself. Have a salad in there. Then maybe you have some cooked or baked vegetables. Stuff that's filling is like the baked zucchini, baked acorn squash. There's a baked acorn squash recipe that's on mucus-free-life.com. And you have that. Then you start to, once you get into that, now you're in the realm where you can start to incorporate some of the mucus-forming transitional items, whether it be well-toasted wheat bread. The reason that we well-toast it is because it's going to eliminate better, the well-toasted wheat bread. But I use that principle of, okay, that's at the end. So if I'm going to expand and explore other things, then I put that toward the end. And so after all that, then I would have, if I was going to have some cereal or something like that was like mucus forming stuff, I would kind of throw that in there toward the end like that. So that's what I mean by, these are things. It's not necessarily, it's not in the book, but the logic in which at least I applied and used those things were based on Eric's recommendation, the transition diet logic that's laid out in it through examples. See, the logic and the principles are laid out through examples and with some explanation. And so you got to understand that those menus, sample menus, those are examples to give you the overall principles and an understanding of the structure of what we're doing. So I applied the structure, but I explored some of these other things. Now, this didn't last for forever. I would maybe only ate, to go back to the cottage cheese, I think I ate the cottage cheese just maybe for 3 or 4 months, and I transitioned off of that into baked banana. So I did the baked banana, applesauce, chopped dates, and that was, and that got me off of using the cottage cheese. Things like this, the cereal, I only use this for I don't know, maybe 6 months or so, maybe longer than that, but it wasn't something that I did for super long. Maybe I said, well, maybe it was a year. But it's hard for me because I am trying to remember things. It wasn't for years and years. It was something that within a year or two, I was totally done with experimenting with that. Especially, and the reason was because mixing the milk stuff like that, my body got sensitive to that really quickly. Where mixing like soy milk along with the wheat product that turns mushy and mucusy, that my body just wasn't into that no more. When I first started using it, it was actually I was having some great bowel movements from it, but it didn't take long to where that stuff didn't eliminate well anymore. And so once something doesn't eliminate well anymore, then I'm into getting off of it. I want to get away from it. So I think there's a number of other things I could talk about. I used to make I would kind of bake a little. It was like help me transition off of pizza. I would do these little tortillas. Let me try to find this. See what comes up. Well, it was an organic one. I tried to stay away from those regular. That's not coming up. Oh yeah. So something like this. These Ezekiel bread tortillas. So I would take a tortilla, and I'd have the oven at I always do stuff at 425 degrees. So I had the oven at 425 degrees, and I would put tomato sauce over top before I cooked the Ezekiel bread. Tomato sauce over top of that, and sprinkle some onions and maybe some garlic or other chopped vegetables and things, just some stuff on top of that. And then I would sit that in the oven for about, usually about 10 minutes or something, 10 or 12 minutes. Oh, well, the thing that made it happening was I'd put the seasoning. So I'd have the onion powder and the garlic powder and oregano and thyme and stuff, you know. So I'd make that just, you know, and so it'd be in there baking and smelling all good. And come out, so I have a big salad. I might have 2 of those on the side instead of having the 100% wheat bread. That kind of fulfilled that. And I'd cook it long enough where it wouldn't be mushy at all. You know, it would be it would be like kind of like thin crust pizza kind of stuff, like be kind of crunchy. And I did that, you know. So that's, but again, I didn't just do that and eat it, you know, eat that first or eat that whenever I wanted to. I was very disciplined about raw salad, eating the raw salad first, then had some kind of cooked vegetable, or maybe if I had the steamed broccoli or the stewed cabbage, and then something like that, where if I was kind of craving a little bit of something, a little pizza-y or something, I'd throw that in there, and then that would be, I'm not hungry, you know, I'm not hungry at all. And then a key with in this time frame, what I was doing lemon juice enemas at least once a day, either in the morning. The time of day changed, so sometimes it was a morning, sometimes it was later on or at different times. But so that's one. I have to do the last restaurant that I really was eating at, or the last fast food restaurant was, and this is, you know, this is our mucus addiction circle. You know, I'm Professor Spira, and I'm a mucus addict. You know, it's been, you know, however many years since I've eaten some of these things I'm talking about. But I used to go to, I would get, and please, I'm not recommending this, I'm not advocating this, I'm just being honest about what helped me transition again from eating 2 footlongs with chili and cheese, a cheeseburger, 2 root beers, a root beer float, and a bag of popcorn twice a week, into where I was able to do a 6-month-long juice fast. I'm not recommending any of that, but I'm saying but anytime we talk about fasting, we're giving you an example. I didn't go from that to being able to fast like that, or to be 100% mucus free for 9 months or 10 months at a time, without going through these transitional menus that I'm talking about right now. They were a huge part of the whole thing. And I guess, you know, at different times I've talked about these things. Like I said, in Spira Speaks, I get into that. I talk about, you know, my nature burger period and all that kind of stuff, the bean feasts and things. So I talk about these things. It's not something I'm trying to hide. I don't want to promote it and share it in a way where it's like, okay, where all of a sudden then everybody runs and goes and does these things. It's all about your transition, and it's what you need to do. So if you need to do some things that and be creative about the mucus that you're using and transitioning with and incorporating, then you need to do that. So with all of that, and I've mentioned this before, but I used to go to Taco Bell, and in the early part of the transition, I would go to Taco Hell, and and so, but I would go there and I would get the bean burrito with no cheese on it, and I'd tell them to add lettuce, not like that did that much great, but add lettuce, no cheese, no sour cream, nothing like that. So I mean, this was it's with no cheese. Let me see what they do, like no cheese. So that was, but I would have that with that looks so gross now. But I was crushing this back, particularly the first, like, I want to say 9 months of practicing the diet, but especially those first 6 months. And I really did feel like a crackhead driving through the drive-through, like, kind of my mouth, and it's okay, so and I didn't beat myself up. I accepted that I was an addict. I accepted that I'm acting like a crackhead. And so I'm in my car and you're like, my mouth is watering and I'm like, I might be fidgeting and I'm like, going through that like a crackhead that's about to go get, that's can't wait to get that crack. So I go through and I would get like 2 or 3 of them. I get 2 or 3 of these bean burritos, and then I'd have like a bunch of lettuce and stuff that I had with me. And so before I started eating the burrito, I would kind of stuff my face with a bunch of like salad kind of lettucey stuff. I wouldn't even put nothing on it. I was just eating lettuce and celery and stuff. So I kind of eat that to kind of act as a buffer. And then I'd eat the cheese-free Taco Hell burrito, and man, and it was not again, it's not something I recommend people do because I was overeating, but that was not only did I have to deal with, in my case, not only did I have to deal with an addiction to pus and mucus forming foods, but I'm also dealing with the addiction to just general overeating. So you got to understand where you're coming from. I bet most of you probably didn't eat like I ate. Most of you didn't eat 2 footlongs and a cheeseburger or a large pizza in one sitting. So you're not going to have to do what I'm doing. So I'm not saying that. But there are a lot of you that need to go back to at the bare minimum, go back to those Arnold Ehret recommendations for the transition. Because you think you can skip over them, and you did, and you think you're feeling good for a couple months or a couple years, and then you get mad because you're like, why isn't this working? Why can't I do all fruit? Or I was feeling good last year or last month, but now I'm falling apart. You didn't go a year eating the stewed cabbage and baked cabbage and baked cauliflower. You thought you were better than that. You didn't spend any time. You didn't spend enough time with these transitional items. You're trying to rush. You're trying to get there so fast. So coming from this, so that's what to put into perspective. So I had to deal with overeating that you might not have to deal with. You might be somebody that never overate anything. You just liked eating meat and pus-forming foods and that kind of stuff. So you might not have to worry about that part of it. But I did, because this is how I ate. So the transition from, instead of having that, when I was craving that, when I was craving 2 footlongs with chili and cheese, and when I was craving that, which I craved in the first year of my transition, I craved, especially in springtime, because they open in spring. And I noticed this for the first several years of my transition, as the seasons changed, whatever habit I used to have, I would crave those foods. And so I would eat my worst in spring. And so in springtime, I've noticed, the transition, I would be craving that. Now, one of the ways that I used my fasting, which later, when I did do the long-term fasting, I strategically did it through those periods of time when I ate the worst. So when I did the fast, I would normally fast from like fall through the spring, and that actually totally got me beyond all of the craving for any of that. So when springtime rolls around, after I did that, I no longer craved all of those old bad things that I used to. But But just but this is we got to put all these things into perspective. So instead of this, my transition was to do that. But because I was doing, and now if I wasn't doing the enemas, I might not have ever got off of that. To be honest. That's why we say that the enemas are so important, and they're like the so-called kind of saving grace as a tool, because once you get that enough of those poisons out of your system, you no longer crave those things. So I got to a point where what the transition I did from the burritos was I went from the burritos bought from Taco Bell, because when I stopped getting them was when I know there was some cross-contamination in what I bought. Because I would always open it up to check, and the last time that I ever bought the bean burrito from Taco Bell, I had opened it up and looked in it, and there was this little tiny bit of meat that had cross-contaminated in, and threw it away, and I never went back through the drive-thru again. That was it for me. I started buying my own cans of refried beans. I got the little Taco Bell refried beans, and I started making the stuff myself at home, and it tasted 10 times better, and and then I just kept transitioning. So I went from their beans, which have some questionable ingredients, then I started getting like organic refried bean stuff, and then always incorporating it with a big salad and all that stuff, the principles. So that's how you can work in various transitional items like that. But you always want to do it within the context of the structure. That structure that's laid out in the Mucusless Diet Healing System is just so important. And you learn that structure by reading and rereading and rereading these 3 transition diet lessons. Please read it again, read it again, read it again. Brother Ayers practiced Mucusless Diet almost 40 years. He's still reading the book. And as he says, he's still practicing from the early, these early stuff, the lesson 1, lesson 2, lesson 3. But so many people think they're better than the transition diet lessons. They think they can do this on their own. They think that they can do it without dealing with these transitions, that they can just eat nothing but fruit, or they can, or they think that, because I detoxed more advanced, I was using herbs and I was doing this, I'm going faster. I'm better than that because I'm fast. I've already fasted quite a bit, and I've already did this and that. So I don't really need to mess with all of So I'm just saying, that kind of attitude has a way of coming back to bite you in the butt. This thing right here, this is about being humble. This will humble you. Mucusless Diet Healing System by Professor Arnold Ehret is something that will humble you. Because if you think you're advanced, and you think that you're the man, or you're the woman, or you're the whatever, you think that you're the crowning achievement of humanity, this diet will kick you and trip you and throw you down the stairs. But if you come to this humble, and you come to this open, and you study these lessons, and you give in to the transition, you let go of all of the ego and all of the waste of time of trying to be obsessed about trying to be the best, or competition. This is not a competition. This is not about trying to do what I did or Brother Air or something. This is your story. This is your journey. You got to live your transition. You got to live your life. You got to take responsibility for understanding these principles and give them time. Really work the principles and give them time. And if it doesn't work for you, then you gave it a shot. But at least give it a shot. And instead of saying, I've been raw for 5 years and I don't really want to, go back to, what can I do to, I get that all the time. It's like, I've eaten raw for such and such years, and so I really don't want to go back, but I want to be mucus free. I don't know what to tell you. I mean, you can be raw and mucus free if you want, if you can, but that's not what I promote. I promote practicing the system. And I don't promote any one outcome, which some people criticize me about, because we don't have like a dogmatic one thing that you're supposed to become or where you're supposed to go. Again, people that want the authoritarianism, they want like a very clear goal of this is what's supposed to happen, or this is the ultimate goal of practicing this lifestyle. And like I said, this is more advanced than that. This ain't like we're gonna give you all the answers of well, this is what you're supposed to do. Everybody's got a different set of goals. Everybody is practicing the diet for different reasons and has a different vision. As you practice, your vision changes, and that's one of the reasons why I don't want to impose something on to everybody and say that this is what you're supposed to do, like they do in the raw food community, where they have goals of hell or high water, you better be raw. Or in the vegan community, hell or high water, you better not touch something that's not plant-based. We are not like that. People try to make it seem like we are. We aren't. This is a middle path, and you can hate it. I mean, you can say, no, I don't want to. I want authoritarianism. I don't want to be free. You can do that. You can find something that's much more structured and is a lot more dogmatic. We're just not like that. This is an artist spirit, improvisational spirit. It takes that to really be successful and practice this mucusless diet on a high level. And so yeah, so I had a lot to get off my chest, and it's just that there's more and more. I'm just seeing more and more people that are that were either into one of the more radical kind of fruitarian programs, or trying to be raw foodists for long periods of time, and then but also like dibbing and dabbing, as Brother Air would say, into the mucusless diet, and then when their time comes to fall off the wagon, which is coming, it's not pretty. And so, but if we were to transition and really give the methodology a chance, give the methodology a shot. Each person is different. So I'm just kind of giving the general deal with no matter who you are. If you are interested in the Mucusless Diet Healing System and going down this path, then we got to deal with this methodology. But obviously, there's some people that have illnesses or certain things where you might not have time to start and do things really slow. So I'm not saying, again, this is about what you need. But at some point, even the person that wasn't able to start from the basic parts of the transition are going to have to understand how the transition works at some point. Once maybe they heal themselves of whatever it was that was happening, instead of going back to their old diet, or instead of trying to do something that's too aggressive because they can't sustain a fruit thing or heavy fasting or something. Eric mentions it when he talks about fasting. He says one of his quotes is that if fasting is to be used at all, he says you can practice the Mucusless Diet Healing System and not fast, and not do days of fasting. So for the people that want to try to say that the mucusless diet is really radical and we're all about trying to become 100% fruitarian and all this kind of stuff, those are just ignorant statements, because anybody that's read the book and was open to really and didn't just pay attention to the philosophy and the ideals, but actually looked at the mechanics of what he was saying. So I encourage you to have discussions about the methodology. I just rarely see that in the forum, and I want to see those conversations. I want people asking about, like, oh, tonight I tried a certain type of bread, or I tried a new type of 100% wheat pasta, or I tried this quinoa stuff, or I did this or that, I did something at 12 p.m. but this week I'm going to try it in the evening. Working with the methodology. When you start asking those type of questions, you show that you actually understand how this system works and how the methodology is, and that's where the exploration is. The exploration comes out of exploring these methods and exploring these different things. So I'm going to take a quick break here, and I'm going to come back and I'll say hi to some of you guys in chat and see if there's any questions there, and then we will wrap things up for today, and we will continue to listen to some of the Arid Day celebration band material. Enjoy.
We are mucus-free. We are mucus-free. We are mucus-free. We are mucus-free.
All right, greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm back, and for just a few more minutes, I want to say hi to everybody that's in the chat and maybe field a couple questions that's down there. And a couple back to those announcements. You can find some of the links down below that are, if you're interested in the Mucusless Diet Healing System e-course, which the next time that's well, actually now I have you could actually join right now. I'm gonna be in the next couple of weeks have another class, but right now for just a limited amount of time, for those of you that are on here that want to join, you can actually you can enter into that, and there's I think is that 60% off. I think 60% off. Which is, if you're interested in any of this that we're talking about, I would highly recommend the Mucusless Diet Healing System e-course. There's only so far. I put through an initial class starting a couple months ago, so they're almost done. So the first group of people that went through the e-course is almost done, and I've got nothing but just real positive reviews, and people just really seem to love what I did. And I've worked on that e-course for years. You know, I started working on it in 2013, and it was definitely a labor of love. You know, and I wanted it to be right. You know, I didn't want to just rush through it and just kind of put anything together. I wanted something that really was comprehensive, covered all of the main questions that most people have. Solidify certain things. You know, there's certain things that we talk about in there that really don't get talked about anywhere else. That's anywhere that I know of. You know, I talk about the history of, you know, Ragnar Berg, and we go over the Ragnar Berg table, and number of other things that I don't get into a lot of other spots. So if you're interested in that, check down below for that link. There's also the Eric Day celebration library, video library, 5.5 hours worth of some wonderful talks. You can get access to those. The link is down below for more information about that. And then if you have questions, I don't have that link down there to my questions form, but you can actually find that on a previous office hours, or I will add that to this video once we get off of here. But so let me say hi to everybody. What's going on? We got Bruce was asking Amber how to how to lose 10 pounds. Oh, I'll say, well, if you ask me, I would say do some enema. You know, do a week's worth of enemas and start practicing the Mucusless diet. You know, and you're gonna. There's a lot of people have 10 or 15 pounds of uneliminated waste that they carry around with them in their bowels when they get started, and so 10 or 15 pounds. I mean, we generally don't talk about weight. You know, we don't really get into talking about like and analyzing weight. Is like, okay, you know, I mean, I never stepped on, I mean, for years early on. I mean, I might have stepped on a scale once in 2 years or something. I mean, I just wasn't analyzing that. That wasn't something, because your weight can go up and go down. It depends on what's happening physiologically. It's just how you roll. But so in terms of just losing 10 pounds, I mean, that generally we just don't think like that. That's not even a healthy way to think, where you're trying to like, oh, I just want to lose 10 pounds. It's like, man, just, you know, it's about healing and cleansing the body and trying to align yourself physiologically with with a more healthy diet. And let's see, here's a question. Goslin Mosley, what's going on, man? Hello, Professor Spira. Thanks again for doing these office hours. My program for the week. What is your take on ulcers, and what is someone can do about it if the medical profession says that they can't help them? So, ulcers and other kinds of inflammation of the gut, and people tend to have a lot of success using something like the Mucusless Diet Healing System for that. So, with a person that is dealing with that, I would tell them, just like everybody else, all right, go through the Mucus first and foremost, read the book, read the Mucusless Diet Healing System book, and then start applying the principles. The difference there is there's going to be certain things that person will want to try to get off of as soon as possible, possibly without transitioning if it's possible. So I've seen people heal ulcers just getting off of meat products and meat and dairy, and chilling out, and so having a little bit of removing some stress from the life. So I want to incorporate some of the mental health aspects too, which is important, to do some things, whether meditation or some yoga or some breath work and science of breath and things like that. So you want to chill out, get centered, and that kind of thing. So and cut stress out of life, because sometimes that can contribute to just overall various ailments that definitely contributes when you enter that stress in there. But on a diet physiological level, I've seen people heal some of that stuff just removing meat and dairy, and not even really practicing the system very well. They remove meat and dairy, started incorporating a little bit of juicing, some green juices and stuff like that, that are not too aggressive. As Eric talks about the vegetable heavy, which we talked about earlier today, really focusing on some of the vegetables, and cooked fruit. Things because if you start eating a lot of aggressive fruits, that can be painful, a painful way to do it. Some people recommend that. They'll say, well, just get into that. They have that person get into a lot of raw fruits and fruit juices and herbs and stuff, but I would recommend dealing with the transition diet, and maybe steering clear of like the cottage cheese and egg-based mayonnaise and that kind of stuff. Try to get off of the meat as soon as you can. Maybe kind of stay away from some of the fake soy products and that kind of anything like that's going to kind of create unnecessary acid, uric acid in the body. But stuff like the baked vegetables, the baked fruit, I would recommend vegetable juice, fresh vegetable juice to that person. But after you do that for a while and you transition to at least to a point, you getting some enemas in there. If there's any sores where lemon juice enemas irritate you, then maybe then do water for a while until you can stand the use lemons. But and then the fasting principles. So again, either in the Mucusless Diet Healing System book or Rational Fasting. Eric recommends doing short-term fasts. So he doesn't recommend doing real long fasts. So he recommends 21 day fast, between 1 and 5 day fast, at least when you're getting started. And so I recommend fasting for that person after they have learned how to transition a bit. So that's just kind of my general thing. Anything deeper than that person would need to work with someone, work with a personal coach or mucus-free coach or something like that, to kind of help with further guidance for because this is it's hard sometimes. You give just a general. It's like, well, just overall, essentially you want to avoid things that are going to be acidic and cause uric acid, because you want to give those sores a chance to heal. That stuff in there, the inflammation. So that's my That's kind of my response there for the ulcers. And as Amber said, start transitioning to mucus-free diet, which would go for anybody there. And Brian says, Spira, you are a real one, bro. Well, thank you, Brian. Mrs. Coleman, hello, everyone. Well, hello, Mrs. Coleman. So Sergio asked, hi, Professor Spira. Arnold Ehret says meat is inflammatory and poisonous, but I've been hearing lots of testimonials from people on the carnivore diet saying they are getting better and healing. What is your opinion on that? Why don't they get worse from eating poison? Well, that's the thing. Humans over long generations, and some of them their argument is that we became humans because of cooked meat. That's what made us great, was we started cooking meat, and then we got real intelligent, and I don't buy that, but that's the argument. But if you look at it from this lens, what's happening is humans, like we don't know a whole. It's hard to, because they find new stuff. Archaeologists find new things every year that are significant enough for us to change the history books. So first and foremost, when we start getting into these historical debates, I acknowledge that we don't know everything about what humans, what humans were before at a particular time, and I think that there's a lot of data that's missing that would help explain some of these things that we're talking about. But we're not going to wait on that science. We are physiological archaeologists and pioneering archaeologists that are checking this out to find out, okay, if you transition, which is what many of the folks that I've noticed that have gotten into the carnivore thing were sometimes, and I've seen this for years, so I'm not pointing out any one person. You go back to some videos I talked about in some of my 2013, 2014 videos. I was saying the same exact thing. As I was talking about how people, because back then it was the paleo thing. That was huge. Now ketogenic diet is kind of the flavor of the month. But back then it was all about paleo. So there was a lot of people, not a lot, but there were people. Some of the most hardcore advocates of the fruitarian lifestyle and the plant-based raw lifestyle were falling off the wagon, but they were overnight going from where they were the most ardent cheerleaders of plant-based living and very extreme plant-based living, and then overnight they came clean and said, my life's been horrible and I haven't really felt good, even though they've been rah everything's great, and overnight they start promoting paleo diet back then, and now there's it's all variations of various things, whether ketogenic or now people call it carnivore, whatever. I mean, it's all kind of one-sided meat diet, which is what Ehret termed it, kind of a one-sided meat-based diet. In almost every case of that, it's generally when people did not. If I were to ask them, well, did you spend 2 or 3 years eating stewed fruit and stewed onion sautés and stewed cabbage? Did you maybe spend a year eating the cottage cheese and applesauce, or did you did you take some time when you were getting off of meat? If I asked those people that, most of them would say no, and they would say, well, no, but I ate nothing but fruit for 2 months, or I ate nothing but fruit for 6 months, or I was on a very rigid and hardcore, Dr. Moore's protocol with fruits, and mostly fruits and maybe a little salad in the evening and a whole bunch of herbs. But that's not the Mucusless Diet Healing System. That's not what we promote. And so in a lot of those cases, folks are coming from that. what has happened is they never transitioned. They never transitioned their physiology to the point where it would be impossible for them to go back to eating dead animal flesh. And with the lack of transition, it's their physiology basically is. I like how what was the term? Well, Hilton Hotima said, it's not coming to me at the moment, but basically this principle, like a law of tolerance, where the body over generations has developed a tolerance, not only a tolerance, but an addiction to certain things. And so when you are, trying to have an effort to wean yourself off of something that is that Eric does consider to be poisonous and inflammatory, that doesn't mean that just because you eat it once that you're gonna fall over dead, or that you're gonna feel the negative symptoms of it, especially depending on your physiology and depending on where you're coming from. So for people that didn't transition, that didn't give their body the benefit of a good long transition, it's easy to go back. It can be easy to go back to meat because they never got off of it for real. Because if you can go back to meat like that after doing whatever the plant-based diet is for 2 or 3 years or 5 or 6 years or 10 years, but you're able to go back to meat without transitioning back to it, that lets me know you didn't transition. You didn't practice the transition diet. And different people's physiologies, that's where the history of somebody's physiology comes into play, where depending on your parents and your parents' parents and sort of your physiological bloodline, some people's bloodlines are closer to a mucus-free history, and have ancestors that were mucus-free that were a little bit sooner than other folks. And so there's a tendency sometimes with folks who didn't have whose ancestors, you have to go further in their ancestry to get to mucus-free people. They probably should have taken longer. Maybe they should have taken 2 or 3 years to get off of meat. Don't shoot the messenger, but maybe maybe that would have been a better, instead of jumping into being 100% fruit or trying to be 100% raw or whatever. Maybe you could have transitioned for 3 or 4 years and still been using some of those items, or the egg-based mayonnaise, or whatever, in those cases. Because oftentimes in those cases, that's what I see, is there was a lot of pressure that those people put on themselves to be something other than that doesn't fall into the Mucusless diet methodology, but essentially falls into these other programs that's outside the Mucusless diet, or that they have had a kind of an interpretation of the Mucusless diet that was very strict and rigid, as opposed to where they wouldn't have given themselves that type of chance to transition like that. So I know, and part of even why I mean that's one reason why I decided to talk about what I talked about today with the transition, and really trying to get into some of the things, the transitional items that I used, that I don't recommend, that I don't broadly recommend everybody use, but to give you a bit of to understand how you can have the structure of the Mucusless diet, and what it looks like to have other transitional things that might not be in the book, but you can still apply them structurally in a way where they are ultimately going to eliminate better than if you didn't have any structure at all. And as you work the system, you're going to get to a point where you don't crave those items anymore. But as far as people being able to eat, go back to meat, like I said, if you transition properly and like slow, maybe you take 2 or 3 years to totally 100% get off meat. And I'm not saying that you would be, because people don't think like that about the transition. They don't think in terms of that you can do some things maybe once a year you do something. So there was several years, maybe years 4, 5, and 6, or I don't know, of my own transition, where in the early days I might have ate soy products 4 or 5 times a month. Well, early on there might have been periods where I even ate almost every day. Then it was like 4 or 5 times a month. By the time I got to year 5 or 6, I might have ate soy products 2 or 3 times a year. Who's talking about transition like that? I have nobody else that had that level of transitional kind of sophistication. Understand, there's certain things you don't have to cut everything out right away. Certain things, if you can get to a point where you're having something like once a year or twice a year, there's certain things that I have once or twice a year that I used to use all the time. So I didn't push myself to totally push them all the way out of my diet. I let myself go through the transition. I let myself deal with those transitional items. And so if they pop up once or twice a year, or maybe once every other year, or whatever, I mean, it's not the end of the world. What happens is people get off of something for a year, and then if they go eat it again, they feel like they failed, or that they've fallen back, or that they've not did the diet or something. That's a part of the transition. The work. That's like worked in there. That's a part of the larger transition. So, So as far as getting worse, they can enjoy for a while. They can enjoy feeling, kind of feeling good from that, because it's like when you're talking about poison, it's people can drink alcohol, which is essentially a poison, or it alters the functioning of various aspects of the human body and mind. But you can drink it and not, it's not concentrated enough poison where it would shock your system to the point of death. There are some drugs where you could OD, overdose. So there's some people that are nowhere near being in danger of overdosing if they go back to meat. And so they go back, and like they said, they're having the experience of it's feeling good. They're that's great. But what happens in 6 months or a year? And I'm seeing this with some of the folks where they're starting to have acid issues in the stomach, or gas issues, where for the first 6 months or something, they went back to eating meat, and they felt great for a while, but now there's some symptoms that are coming back, or there's some new negative symptoms, and it's like, okay, well, how do you deal with that? Because if we're supposed to be able to eat these things, then we should never get things like ulcers, or we should never have acid reflux. I've not once had acid reflux when I've eaten mucus-free foods. Now, if I eat some mucus-forming stuff, I can feel it. I have a little burp or something in that little acid reflux. In my former life, before practicing the Mucusless diet, I walked around with Pepto-Bismol in my pocket, and Beano, and the what was that called, lactate, or whatever the stuff helps you be able to drink and process lactose if you're lactose intolerant. So I was 15, 16 years old, walking around with that stuff in my pocket, and using it almost every day. I used to use Pepto-Bismol almost every day. And so then somebody would say, well, you were overeating. I was like, well, yeah, I was overeating a lot of stuff and had a lot of mixtures. But even when I didn't, even when I wouldn't overeat, I would have my days sometimes where I wouldn't overeat everything. And still, it didn't matter if I ate meat. I was gonna have some gas. I was gonna probably have some acid reflux. And so once I got going down the mucus-free path, that was controllable, mucus lean, and non-existent in the mucus-free periods. And so that just let me know, like, okay, well, that's okay. You know, it's just a choice. If I want to experience that painful gas again, and I want to experience the painful heartburn, acid reflux, and all that kind of, if I want that to be a part of my life again, then I transition back to eating those foods. I would transition. I wouldn't, because transition, you can transition off those foods. You can transition onto them. It's up to you. These tools are the tools. You use the tools how you want. So as far as that goes, that's something that I wouldn't. It doesn't surprise me at all in terms of you're gonna feel better for a while, and things are gonna be cool, but sooner or later there's gonna be some mucus elimination or sick or acid stuff or inflammation in your hands, or at some point the other shoe's gonna drop. Just as at some point, because for everybody the other shoe drops. The question is, what side of the fence are you on in term, and do you know methodologies that help you deal with that? I know there's a number of people that were dealing with, coming to, when you come to Mucusless Diet or some of these other things, and you're already in, and you're in bad, kind of in bad shape, already. There's been times where I've recommended that people go back, like we talked about some of these early transitional stuff, but they were so into raw foodism and so into just trying to, doing more herbs and just fasting longer, and listening to people that would say that, well, you just need to fast more, you just need to dig deeper. We sometimes get put into that type of thing when that's not the kind of stuff I recommend, because in a lot of those cases, especially when I'm dealing with raw foodists that have got to the glass ceiling, they've took it as far as they could go, and now they're starting to have cravings for meat. They're starting to have really bad symptoms, or weaknesses, or fatigue, or whatever it is. Then my recommendation is generally not to dig deeper, but to, let's go back to lesson 1. Let's go back through those transition menus. Let's go back to the beginning, and let's really transition. And so, so hope that helps out a little bit. And I'm sure that will be a theme that's going to be coming up, as I know that there's more people that are going in that direction. So we can watch it and see what goes down with that. But there's a tendency to go from one extreme to the other with no transition. So you go from trying to be raw fruits, and then now you're eating, like you said, the carnivore, or the paleo, or ketogenic, or whatever, like overnight, no transition. And so, like I said, certain people's physiology, if there was no transition, you're going to be able to go back and eat those foods, because they never got off of them. They never really, truly got off of that stuff. Whereas there are some people that it could be deadly to mess with that without transitioning. To mess with going back to some of those things without a transition could be very dangerous. And so that's it is what it is. It's the same stuff that Eric was talking about in the 1920s, and those same kind of dietary fads and the problems and the misunderstandings. It's the same exact stuff that's happening today. And so it is what it is. so I appreciate you guys plugging in today. And what's up, Obakan Jones? Yeah, you're saying Spira's dropping jewels today. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you, brother. I try to share something that can be helpful for people to understand. And let's see. There's a couple something else popped up here. Anna, what do you think about Fanio as a transition item? And to get away from rice, which has been pretty challenging for me. Fanio has been pretty satisfying. So I'm not sure exactly. Like I haven't used Fanio, but if it's kind of like, so I'm looking it up. So it's kind of a grass. It's kind of like basically a grain. I think that could be used. It's kind of like the way people use quinoa, and these are just things that are that get you away from wheat products. But I haven't tried that personally, but from looking at it here, looks like that it would eliminate better than rice. But again, you want to combine it with you want to definitely combine it with the salads and that kind of stuff. Johnny, hey, what's going on, Johnny? We got the mangotarian transitioning now. All right, that's or how's that there? And that's what's up, man. Cool. Sergio, thanks, Professor Spira. I can listen to you for hours. Oh, well, thank you for plugging in. So this has been an enjoyable office hour, and hope that it has been enjoyable for you. And so I think with that being said, again, you can check below and see. Oh, the other thing that I put a link down. I haven't really announced its release yet, but it is available on Amazon now. This is Spira's Notes. This is really for people that are taking the e-course, but it is up on Amazon right now if you wanted to just get this. So it's like cliff notes of the Mucusless Diet, the Cliff's Notes of the Mucusless Diet Healing System. So that might be interesting for some of you. So thank you, Anna, for the kind words. So, well, until next time. Now, next week, I'll keep you posted. If I don't do an office hour next week, then I'll do one the following week. But I'm still kind of getting my schedule together for the next couple weeks and working on some things and all that. So yeah. But definitely subscribe to the channel if you're not already subscribed. There's going to be video clips coming out very frequently. I made various video clips out of the Earth Day celebration, as well as I've been sitting on some clips from the e-course, so I'm going to start putting those out there. So to get those, make sure that you're subscribed and plugged in. There's going to be some other things coming out the pike. We're going to be doing something called Humans of Mucus-free Life, which I'll tell you more about that later. We'll be featuring different people. And we're going to try to have some more mucus-free meetups, like we used to do, the live meetups. So we're getting it rolling. We're going to really be doing some stuff and trying to have some fun. So So I hope that you are all enjoying your transition, and make sure that you do what you're passionate about. Have fun. Don't obsess about all this diet stuff too much. Just try to enjoy the process, enjoy the journey. For me, it is not about the destination. It really is just I'm in awe of the process. I'm in awe of this transitional process, and so I recommend that just stick to it, and be kind to yourself, be gentle, but also be steadfast. Don't give up. So. Until next time, peace, love, and breath.